Today, the world is more fragile than ever. The thin fabric of global order, once held together by diplomacy and deterrence, is now fraying over an edge. The recent India-Pakistan conflict, a swift but brutal flash war, left tens of thousands displaced and the subcontinent on edge. The Iran-Israel war, though brief, saw cyber attacks, drone strikes, and escalations that shook the energy markets. Meanwhile, Gaza continues to bleed under blockade, its cries echoing in capitals from Istanbul to Washington. When even as the world tries to recover from all these recent shocks, another confrontation looms, one that could eclipse them all. A confrontation not over ideology or religion or even territory, but over sovereignty, identity, and strategic control. At the heart of this tension, Taiwan, a small island with a big legacy, and the two most powerful nations on earth, China and the United States, are now hurtling towards a collision course over its fate. The rise of China is perhaps the most defining geopolitical event of the 21st century. In just 40 years, the nation transformed itself from a largely agrarian society into a second largest economy in the world. Under President Xi Jinping, this transformation has taken a sharp strategic turn. Economic growth is now coupled with military modernization, cyber warfare readiness, and global influence operations. China's navy is now the world's largest by number of ships. Its missile arsenal, capable of hitting any US base in the Pacific, is second to none, and its Belt and Road Initiative has placed Chinese infrastructure in over 150 countries. But power needs direction. And for Beijing, the ultimate direction, unchanged for over 7 decades, is national reunification, and that means Taiwan. To understand the Taiwan issue, one must go back to 1949. The Chinese Civil War ended with Mao Zedong's communist forces taking the mainland. Chiang Kai-shek's defeated nationalists fled to Taiwan, establishing a government in exile they claimed was the true China. For decades, the world played along. Taiwan held China's seat in the United Nations until 1971. But geopolitics shifted. The US recognized the People's Republic of China in 1979 and officially severed ties with Taipei. Yet it continued to support Taiwan militarily, diplomatically, and morally. Today, Taiwan operates as a fully functional democracy. It elects its leaders, runs its economy independently, and maintains its own military. But Beijing insists Taiwan is not a country. It is a breakaway province that must and will return to the fold. And that brings us to the edge of the present crisis. Today, the global order is in disarray. America, once the unchallenged global police force, now faces crisis on multiple fronts. The Iran-Israel war forced a reallocation of US naval assets. The South Asian conflict has re-energized China's ally, Pakistan. And the ongoing Palestinian crisis continues to split international consensus. For Beijing, this is an opportune moment. The US is overstretched. NATO is distracted. The public appetite in the West for another foreign war is at historic low. And so, for the first time in decades, the calculus in Beijing is shifting. Perhaps Taiwan can be taken. Perhaps the world will hesitate. China has been preparing for a Taiwan war for years. The People Liberation Army conducts regular joint exercises, air, sea, and cyber, designed to isolate and decapitate Taiwanese command structures within hours of an invasion. The plan would likely begin with cyber attacks, paralyzing Taiwan's communication and power grids. Simultaneously, ballistic missiles would rain down on strategic targets, airfield, naval bases, and command bunkers. In the chaos, amphibious forces and paratroopers would storm critical zones, aiming to control Taipei within 72 hours. The objective would be simple: overwhelm Taiwan before the world can respond, prevent the US from mobilizing, and present the world with a fiat accomplished. China knows that hesitation is its ally and speed is its weapon. For China, Taiwan is more than a strategic outpost. It's the beating heart of the global tech economy. Taiwan produces over 60% of the world's semiconductors and over 90% of the most advanced chips. The US military, NASA, Silicon Valley, virtually every modern industry depends on these chips. Losing Taiwan to China would give Beijing an unthinkable advantage, not just militarily but economically. It would allow China to pressure global markets, disrupt supply chains, and impose tech dependency on rival nations. More critically, abandoning Taiwan would deal a blow to US credibility that may never be repaired. Allies in Japan, South Korea, Australia, and Philippines would doubt America's security guarantees. The Indo-Pacific balance of power would tilt irreversibly. This is why Washington insists Taiwan must remain free, not just for Taiwan's sake, but for the future of the liberal world order. As tensions rise, the flashpoint grows hotter. Both China and the US are increasing military readiness. Taiwan, for its part, has shifted to a wartime footing, extending conscription, training, civilian militias, and upgrading air defense systems. In such situation, a miscalculation, a downed jet, a naval collision, or a cyber provocation could ignite the power keg. And once lit, the war would escalate rapidly. US strategy would involve defending Taiwan's airspace, deploying submarines to disrupt Chinese supply lines, and using Japan and Guam as logistical hubs. But Chinese missile capabilities, particularly its hypersonic arsenal, pose unprecedented risk to US bases and carrier groups. A conflict over Taiwan would not be contained. It would ripple across oceans and continents. So what happens if a war breaks out? Beyond the battlefield, the consequences would be staggering. Global markets would crash, the tech industry could freeze, shipping lanes in the South China Sea, through which over $5 trillion of trade passes annually, would shut down. Energy prices would surge, inflation would spike, famine could follow independent nations. The death toll of such event could run into millions, with both superpower possessing advanced weapons, hypersonic missiles, cyber capabilities, satellite targeting precision, and next-gen drones. Entire cities could be paralyzed or destroyed within hours. The risk of escalation would be constant. What starts as a regional conflict could spiral into a full-blown world war. Allies may be pulled in, NATO could be forced to choose sides, Japan and Australia might enter the fray, Russia could exploit the chaos to make moves in Europe or Central Asia. The food system would collapse in many parts of the world. The internet could fragment into rival digital ecosystems. Massive refugee wave would overwhelm borders. Civil unrest could explode across nations facing scarcity, blackouts, and fear. And then there's the ultimate horror, the nuclear question. Though both China and the US possess second strike capabilities, a high-intensity conflict could blur the lines between conventional and nuclear doctrine. In a moment of desperation or misjudgment, a limited nuclear strike could trigger global catastrophe. It would be the end of globalization as we know it, not just a new Cold War, but a descent into a fractured, hostile, and dystopian world order. So the world stands at a crossroads. One path leads to diplomacy, cooperation, and a managed rivalry. The other leads to devastation, escalation, and a future no one wants to see. So the next move made by Beijing, Washington, and Taipei will determine the outcome. Will Taiwan be the Sarajevo of the 21st century, or will leader rise above the temptation of war and preserve the peace? We still have time, but not much, and history is watching. The question is not if, the question is, will we stop it in time?